The most dangerous moment in a collapse is not when the lights go out, but when the realization hits that the paper in your wallet is just paper. We have spent generations building a civilization based on abstract value, where digits on a screen or printed portraits of dead presidents dictate our survival. But history, specifically the brutal economic implosions seen in places like Venezuela or the Weimar Republic, teaches us that this abstraction is fragile. When the complex machinery of society grinds to a halt, the economy doesn't disappear. It simply reverts to its primal form. It sheds the fat of speculation and returns to the bone of utility. I have spoken with individuals who lived through the siege of Sarajevo in the 1990s, and their testimony is always the same. In the first week, people were still checking their bank accounts. By the third week, they were trading gold wedding rings for a few cans of beef. The transition is violent and swift. Consider the streets of Caracas during the height of Venezuela's economic crisis. The bolivar lost value so rapidly that artists began weaving purses and hats out of the currency because the raw cash was worth less than the price of plain paper. This is the first lesson of survival economics. Value is not inherent, it is situational. In a functioning society, a diamond is valuable because of its scarcity and social agreement. In a survival scenario, a diamond is a cold, hard stone that you cannot eat, burn, or shoot. It becomes effectively worthless until stability returns. The survivors I have analyzed didn't survive because they had diverse stock portfolios. They survived because they understood what actually mattered to the human body and mind when the systems of support were stripped away. This shift catches almost everyone off guard. Modern humans are conditioned to believe that wealth is a storage of value that can be retrieved at any time. But in a grid-down scenario, or a SHTF event as it is often called in the field, wealth becomes purely a measure of sustainment. The man with a garage full of toilet paper and canned soup is infinitely wealthier than the man with a safety deposit box full of deeds and bonds. I recall a story from the Bosnian War where a man traded a luxury car, a symbol of supreme status just months prior, for a modest stockpile of antibiotics and heating oil. The car was useless without fuel and dangerous to drive in sniper alleys. The antibiotics were liquid life. This is the new exchange rate. It is brutal. It is unsentimental. And it is entirely based on immediate desperation. The psychological shock of this devaluation cannot be overstated. People cling to their old status symbols. They hesitate to trade their silverware or their jewelry because they still believe normalcy is just around the corner. That hesitation is often fatal. The most successful barterers are those who accept the new reality immediately. They understand that in a post-collapse world, there is no net worth, only daily worth. Can this item keep me warm tonight? Can it stop this infection? Can it silence the hunger in my child's stomach? If the answer is no, its trade value drops to near zero. This guide is not a theoretical list of cool gear. It is a compilation of data points from real-world failures and successes. We are looking at the items that historically maintain or increase their value when the rule of law evaporates. We are looking for high-velocity trade goods, items that everyone needs, that are consumable, ensuring repeat business, and that are portable enough to carry in a backpack if you are forced to flee. The goal here is not just to hoard for yourself, but to have the leverage to acquire what you lack. Because no matter how well you prepare, you will eventually run out of something. And when that day comes, you better have something the other guy desperately wants. When you strip a human being of comfort, security, and hope, you do not get a stoic philosopher. You get a raw, exposed nerve. This is why the first category of high-value trade items is often the most surprising to the uninitiated: vices, alcohol and cigarettes. In the polite society of peacetime, these are recreational habits or public health nuisances. In the mud and misery of a collapse scenario, they are medication. They are the only accessible escape from a reality that has become unbearable. I have studied the economy of prisoner of war camps from World War II to Vietnam, and the pattern is absolute. The cigarette was the gold standard. It was the unit of account against which everything else was measured. A ration of bread cost 3 cigarettes. A shirt cost 20. Even non-smokers hoarded cigarettes because they knew the smokers would trade anything, literally anything, to feed the addiction. Nicotine is a powerful suppressant of appetite and anxiety. When you are starving and terrified, a drag of tobacco offers a fleeting moment of physiological relief that a can of beans cannot provide. It calms the shaking hands. It dulls the gnawing hunger. Alcohol functions similarly, but with higher stakes. It is the poor man's anesthetic and the desperate man's time travel. In the chaos of the Balkan conflicts, homemade brandy, rakija, was liquid currency. It wasn't just for drinking. Alcohol is a multi-utility asset. It sanitizes wounds when medical supplies are exhausted. It preserves fruit and herbs. It is a highly flammable fuel starter. But primarily, people traded for it because it allowed them to forget. I recall accounts from survivors of the Argentine economic crisis who noted that while people stopped buying new clothes almost immediately, the sales of cheap alcohol never dipped. If anything, they spiked. When the future looks bleak, the ability to chemically alter your present state becomes a luxury worth paying for. There is a tactical advantage to stocking vices for trade that goes beyond demand. They are consumable. If you trade a man a knife, he has a knife forever. He never needs to come back to you. If you trade a man a pack of cigarettes or a bottle of whiskey, he will consume it. And when he runs out, he will return. You become a node in the supply chain, a person of importance. This repeat customer dynamic is critical for long-term survival relationships. However, trading vices carries a specific, dangerous volatility. You are dealing with addicts or people under extreme stress. A person going through nicotine withdrawal is irritable and irrational. A drunk person is unpredictable. The historical record shows that dealers in survival situations often become targets. If you are known as the guy with the vodka and the smokes, you are also known as the guy who has what everyone craves. This requires a subtle approach. You never reveal the depth of your stockpile. You are never the store. You're just a guy who happened to find a couple of packs and is willing to part with one. Small, single-serving units are key here. Mini bottles of liquor, nips, are far superior to large handles. They are easier to conceal, easier to trade for smaller items, and less likely to provoke a violent theft attempt than a full liter of spirits. Roll your own tobacco supplies, papers, and loose leaf are often better than factory-made packs because they take up less space and allow for smaller granular transactions. The lesson from the field is clear. Do not judge the vices. Do not look down on the need for escapism. Understanding human weakness is a survival skill. While others are stocking up on endless piles of rice that they will grow sick of eating, the smart survivor allocates space for the things that make the rice bearable. In a world devoid of joy, a single cigarette is a spark of pleasure that commands a king's ransom. In the movies, the survivor is always dirty. There is a smudge of charcoal on their cheek, a layer of cinematic dust on their jacket. It looks rugged. It looks tough. But let me tell you what the reality of filth actually feels like. It is demoralizing. It is painful. and eventually, it is lethal. This brings us to the most underestimated category of trade goods in the amateur survivalist community: hygiene and sanitation. Most people preparing for a collapse stock up on ammunition and freeze-dried beef. They overlook the silent killer that has claimed more lives in the history of warfare than machine guns: disease, dysentery, cholera, typhus. These are the specters that rise when the water stops running and the sewage systems back up. I have reviewed accounts from the aftermath of the Haiti earthquake and the conflicts in Syria. In those environments, a bar of antibacterial soap was not a toiletry item. It was a shield. When you cut your finger in a clean, modern kitchen, you wash it, put a Band-Aid on it, and forget it. In a grid-down scenario where you are butchering animals, moving through debris, and living in squalor, that same cut is a gateway for staph infection. Without soap to clean the wound, a minor scratch can fester into sepsis within days. People realize this very quickly. The fear of the rot sets in. When a mother sees her child scrape turning angry and red, she will not trade for a silver coin. She will trade for a bar of Dial or a bottle of betadine. But beyond the medical necessity, there is the psychological factor of dignity. We are creatures of habit, and we are accustomed to feeling clean. The sensation of greasy hair, rotting teeth, and body odor that won't go away destroys morale faster than hunger. This is where toothpaste and toothbrushes come into play. Dental pain is one of the most maddening pains a human can endure. Without dentists, prevention is the only option. I have heard stories of people in besieged cities boiling willow bark to treat toothaches because they had no way to clean their teeth and rot had set in. A tube of toothpaste is a small portable item that offers a massive psychological return to the buyer. It promises normalcy. It promises a morning where their mouth doesn't taste like decay. And then there is the single most valuable yet frequently ignored trade item: feminine hygiene products. If you are a male survivalist and you do not have a stockpile of tampons and sanitary pads, you are missing half the market. Biology does not stop because the economy collapsed. For women in survival situations, the lack of these supplies is a nightmare of hygiene and mobility. During the Great Depression and in modern refugee crises, women have been forced to use rags, moss, or torn clothing, leading to infections and severe discomfort. A box of tampons is lightweight, never expires, and holds immense value. It is a consumable item that commands a high price because the alternative is humiliating and dangerous. Furthermore, these items have dual utility. A tampon is essentially a sterile, highly absorbent cotton plug, perfect for plugging a puncture wound or a gunshot wound in an emergency. A sanitary pad is an excellent pressure dressing for heavy bleeding. Experienced field medics know this. When you stock these, you are stocking medical supplies that double as essential comfort items. The trade dynamic here is distinct. Unlike a gun or a tool, hygiene supplies are finite. They get used up. This guarantees that if you are the source of soap and sanitation, your neighbors need you to survive. You become a protector of the community's health. That is a safer position to be in than being the guy with all the guns. People rob the guy with the guns. They protect the guy who keeps the sickness away. There is a specific kind of silence that falls over a room when someone is screaming in agony and there is nothing anyone can do to stop it. I have heard it. It is the sound of helplessness. In the modern world, we have forgotten that for 99% of human history, a simple infected tooth or a deep cut on the leg was a death sentence. We live in a bubble of biological safety created by two things: antibiotics and analgesics. When the pharmacy closes down, that bubble pops, and we return to the era where nature tries to kill you every single day. This brings us to the highest tier of trade value, the God tier, antibiotics and painkillers. I call it the God tier because possessing these items gives you the power to grant life or take away suffering. In the hierarchy of needs, once the belly is full and the thirst is slaked, the avoidance of pain becomes the singular driving force of the human animal. Let's look at antibiotics first. In a collapse scenario, whether it's a war zone in Eastern Europe or the aftermath of a super typhoon, sanitation drops to zero. You are working with dirty hands, drinking questionable water, and getting cut by debris. Infection is inevitable. I recall a case from the Venezuelan collapse where a man died from a blister on his heel. He had walked miles to find food. His boot rubbed his skin raw, the wound got infected. Sepsis set in, and without amoxicillin, he was dead in a week. To a father, watching his daughter burn up with a fever from a simple throat infection, a blister pack of antibiotics is worth more than a gold bar. He cannot feed the gold to the infection. Smart survivalists stockpile broad-spectrum antibiotics. They know that these pills are the ultimate bargaining chip. However, this is a trade that must be handled with extreme caution. You are not a doctor, unless you actually are, and dispensing medication carries the risk of allergic reactions or improper dosing. But in the field, liability laws don't exist. People will take the risk. They will trade their last reliable weapon or a month's worth of food for a course of ciprofloxacin or doxycycline. Then there are the painkillers. Not just Tylenol or ibuprofen, though those are essential for keeping fevers down and managing the daily aches of hard labor, but the stronger stuff. Codeine, tramadol, leftover prescription opioids. In a grid-down world, injuries are frequent. Broken bones, burns, and crushed fingers happen when people are chopping wood or scavenging through rubble. There is no ambulance coming. There is no surgical anesthesia. If someone has to set a broken bone, the person holding the painkillers holds the mercy. I knew a group who survived the siege of Sarajevo who told me that a single pill of strong painkiller could trade for enough firewood to heat a home for days. Why? Because pain breaks the mind. A man in severe pain cannot work, cannot hunt, and cannot sleep. He is a liability to his group. By trading him relief, you are trading him the ability to function again. You are giving him his sanity back. But here is the critical warning, written in the blood of those who learned the hard way. Silence is your only armor. If you are known as the person with the good meds, you are in immediate danger. Desperate people do not barter, they take. If a neighbor knows you have the antibiotics that could save their dying spouse, and you refuse to trade because the price isn't right, or even if you simply don't have enough, they will not accept no for an answer. They will kick in your door. The Field Survival Analyst Protocol for medical trading is strict. Never admit to a stockpile. You never have antibiotics. You found a few pills in an old cabinet. Trade sparingly. Do not flood the market. Scarcity maintains value and lowers your profile. Third-party degrees of separation. Ideally, you do not trade directly with the end user if they are a stranger. You trade through a trusted intermediary, so the desperate party does not know where the supply originated. Possessing these items is a heavy burden. You will be faced with moral choices that most modern people cannot comprehend. But in terms of pure economic leverage, nothing beats the ability to cure the sick. You have likely never experienced true darkness. In the modern world, even at night, the sky is stained with the amber glow of streetlights, and our homes are dotted with the standby LEDs of appliances. We have forgotten that for most of human existence, The setting sun marked the end of productivity and the beginning of vulnerability. When the grid fails, really fails, not just a flicker during a storm, but a blackout that stretches into weeks, the darkness that descends is heavy. It is suffocating, and it brings with it a primal fear that no amount of bravado can suppress. This is why batteries, lighters, and fuel form the triad of conquering the dark. Shutterstock. Let's start with the humble disposable lighter. In the survival trade, a Bic lighter is a miracle of engineering. It is small, waterproof, and capable of producing thousands of flames. I have watched survival experts on television struggle to start a fire with a bow drill or flint and steel. It is exhausting, calorie-burning work. In a survival situation where you are already cold, wet, and tired, you do not want to struggle for fire. You want a click and a flame. Fire is not just warmth. It is the only way to sterilize water without chemicals. It is the only way to cook raw meat. In the besieged cities of Syria, a disposable lighter became a unit of currency, traded for bread or passage through checkpoints. It represents the power to sustain life in your pocket. Stockpiling hundreds of these takes up the space of a shoebox, yet that shoebox holds more trade value than a stack of gold coins when the temperature drops below freezing. Then there is the issue of light itself. During the Texas freeze of 2021, I analyzed reports of families huddled in multi-million-dollar homes, burning furniture to stay warm, terrified of the pitch-black silence outside. When the power goes out, security systems fail. You cannot see who is approaching your door. You cannot see to tend to a wound or clean a weapon. Darkness is a force multiplier for panic. This makes batteries, specifically AA and AAA, extremely high-value items. They power the headlamps that allow you to work at night. They power the radios that bring in news from the outside world. I have seen trade scenarios where a fresh pack of Duracells commanded a premium price because the buyer's flashlight was dead, and the psychological strain of sitting in the dark was breaking them. Rechargeable batteries with a small solar charger are even better, but for quick barter, standard alkalines are the coin of the realm. They are universally understood and universally needed. Finally, we must talk about fuel. Not necessarily gasoline for cars, though that is valuable. It degrades quickly and is hard to store safely, but propane and camping fuel. In a long-term grid-down scenario, the ability to boil water inside a shelter without filling the room with smoke is a luxury. Small propane canisters, the green ones used for camping stoves, become incredibly sought after. They allow for a hot meal, which is a massive morale booster, and they allow for the sterilization of water. I remember reading a log from a survivor in a collapsed economy who noted that hot water is civilization. Being able to wash with warm water, drink hot tea, or eat a hot stew separates the survivors from the dying. Those who control the fuel control the comfort. However, trading fuel is dangerous. It is heavy, it is flammable, and it signals that you have the means to cook. If you are trading fuel, you are effectively telling people you have a warm home. This can attract unwanted guests. The protocol here is to trade small, sealed units, like the disposable lighters or single battery packs, rather than large jerry cans of gas. You want to be the person who can provide a light in the dark, not the person known for hoarding the community's energy supply. When the lights go out, the person with a lighter is the keeper of the flame. It is a position of ancient, almost religious power. Do not underestimate it. There are two sounds that define the extremes of survival: the quiet sprinkling of salt on a bland meal and the deafening crack of a gunshot. One preserves the will to live, the other preserves life itself. This duality brings us to the next critical pairing of trade goods: salt, spices, and ammunition. First, let's talk about food, not calories, but flavor. In the field, we talk about a phenomenon called appetite fatigue. It sounds trivial to the well-fed, but it is a genuine physiological danger. If you are forced to eat plain boiled rice or unseasoned beans for 3 weeks straight, your brain will eventually revolt. You will feel nauseous at the sight of food. You will stop eating enough to maintain your energy, even though the food is right there. This is where salt and spices become survival gold. Historically, salt was the original currency. Roman soldiers were paid in it, the origin of the word salary. In a collapse, we return to that standard. Salt is not just a flavor enhancer. It is a biological necessity for muscle function and hydration, and crucially, it is the primary method for preserving meat without refrigeration. If you kill a deer but cannot freeze the meat, you must cure it. Without salt, that meat rots in days. With salt, it lasts months. I have analyzed logs from the Bosnian War where a small bag of salt was traded for a gold ring. Why? Because you cannot eat gold, and without salt, the bland, repetitive diet of survival rations breaks your spirit. Hot sauce, pepper, bouillon cubes. These are lightweight, cheap to stack deep, and they have an incredible return on investment. Trading a tiny bottle of Tabasco to a man who has been eating plain MREs for a month can get you almost anything you want. It brings a flash of color to a gray world. Now we pivot to the weight of lead. Ammunition. In the United States specifically, ammunition is the ultimate hard currency. It is compact, durable, divisible, and holds intrinsic value. Unlike a dollar bill, a 5.56 millimeter round has a physical function. It can put food on the table or stop a threat at the door. It is effectively stored death, and that gives it a grim but undeniable value. However, trading ammo is the most high-risk transaction you can engage in. There is a golden rule in the field. Never arm your enemy. When you trade a box of 9mm rounds to a stranger, you have to consider the possibility that those rounds could be used against you 5 minutes later. The desperation that drives a man to trade for ammo is the same desperation that might drive him to use it to take the rest of your stash. Therefore, the protocol for trading ammo is specific. Trade incompatible calibers. If you carry a 9mm pistol and a 5.56mm rifle, you trade 45 ACP or 12-gauge shotgun shells. You trade the ammo you cannot use to people who can use it, but who cannot use it in your guns, ideally. This isn't always possible, but it's a layer of safety. Small batches. You never trade a 500-round case. You trade 20 rounds. Enough to hunt a deer or defend a home for a night, but not enough to wage a war. The tax. In some survival economies, ammo is used to pay tolls at checkpoints. It acts as a bribe. It is the universal language of power. There is a profound contrast here. Salt represents the preservation of the old life, the taste of dinner with family, the preservation of harvest. Ammunition represents the reality of the new life, the constant vigilance, the violence. A smart survivor stocks both. They understand that you need the salt to make the survival bearable, and you need the ammo to ensure you live long enough to taste it. These items are the ballast of your trade inventory. They are heavy, they are permanent, and as long as there are human beings trying to eat and trying not to die, they will never depreciate. The transaction itself is the point of failure. You can have a basement full of antibiotics and gold, but if you do not understand the psychology of the exchange, you are just a supply drop for a more violent man. The history of field survival is littered with the bodies of people who had the right gear, but the wrong behavior. This final part is not about what to trade, but how to stay alive while doing it. The first rule of survival economics is poverty camouflage. In the security world, we call this being the gray man, but in a collapse, it goes deeper than just blending in. You must actively project struggle. If everyone around you has lost 20 pounds and is wearing rags, and you walk out in a crisp tactical jacket with a healthy glow on your cheeks, you are painting a target on your back. You are signaling that you have a stockpile. I have studied accounts from the economic collapse in Argentina where homeowners would intentionally dirty their clothes and leave their front lawns overgrown and trash-strewn to avoid attracting looters. They understood that looking destitute was their best defense. When you go to trade, you should look tired. You should complain about how hard it is to find food. You never let anyone know you are thriving. You are always just scraping by, just like them. The second rule is location security. Never, under any circumstances, conduct a trade at your home base. If a stranger sees where you sleep and sees the extent of your supplies, you have compromised your security permanently. Experienced survivors use airlocks or neutral ground. You meet at a crossroads, a ruined landmark, or a market day established by the community. You bring only what you intend to trade and a concealed weapon for insurance. If the deal goes bad, you lose only what is in your pack, not your entire livelihood. I recall a tragic case from a breakdown in civil order where a man invited a friendly trader into his home to swap fuel for medicine. The trader saw the generator, the food stores, and the family. 2 nights later, the trader returned with a gang. The lesson is brutal but simple. Distance is security. Finally, we must address the psychology of negotiation. In a high-stakes environment, you are not negotiating for profit. You are negotiating for survival. You must read the desperation level of the other party. Are they trading because they want a luxury or because their child is dying? A desperate man is dangerous. He is volatile. If you push too hard on the price, he might snap. A smart trader leaves the other guy feeling like he won. You give a little extra. You throw in a lighter with the can of beans. You build goodwill. In a long-term collapse, your reputation is your credit rating. If people know you are fair and reliable, they will protect you because you are a valuable asset to the ecosystem. If you are a shark, they will wait for the moment you are weak and they will devour you. We have covered gold, vices, hygiene, medicine, light, and ammo. These are the items that history tells us skyrocket in value when the facade of civilization cracks. But do not mistake the map for the territory. These items are just objects. They are useless without the will to survive and the wisdom to use them discreetly. The ultimate trade item is skill. The person who knows how to fix the radio is worth more than the radio. The person who knows how to suture a wound is worth more than the bandage. Stockpile the goods, yes, but stockpile the knowledge. Learn to repair, to heal, to negotiate, and to read the silence in a room. Because when the world breaks, the things you own can be taken from you in a heartbeat. But what you know and who you are is the only thing that is truly yours. That is what will bring you through the fire.